South Carolina. Good afternoon. We're excited to be online with all of you. Yesterday, we launched Amplify Action. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to sharing more about Amplify Action's mission. As we welcome your questions, please put them in the chat box below and we'll answer them during question and answer. My name is Brandon Upson. I serve as the Executive Director of Amplify Action. I was born and raised in Aiken, South Carolina. I'm a Southerner, I'm a combat veteran, and I'm a father and a husband. But most importantly, I'm a Black man, and I'm a proud Black man. We're launching Amplify Action to reach Black men across the Southeast, specifically in South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. Following the recent murder of our dear brother, George Floyd, we are all called to do everything we can in our communities to fight against racism, discrimination, and injustice in every part of our system. We are called to amplify our voices and the unique experiences of our brothers in this work. We are called to transform our communities by moving our Black men to organize, to vote in elections, to run for office, and to advocate for the policies that will create the substantive change that we seek. Today, you will hear from our senior leadership team about the work of Amplify Action, as well as our partners and some key supporters about why we need Amplify at this moment. I truly believe that we've been prepared for such a time as this. And I want to ensure that we show you how you can get involved in this movement. But before we proceed this afternoon, I want to recognize that we cannot do the work without the love and the support of our Black sisters. It takes all of us to build a community that is fair, equitable, and just for all. I'm proud to work closely with our next speaker, who is a dear friend of mine and one of Amplify's senior leaders, Sheena Matthews. Next, you will hear from Sheena. She serves as our development director, and she's going to give us a very special introduction. Sheena, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for your Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheena Matthews. I serve as the development director for Amplify Action. I'm a native of Chattanooga, Tennessee, currently reside in North Carolina by way of Birmingham, Alabama. I'd like to start by saying, above all things, I'm a daughter of and a sister to Black men. I work every day for Amplify Action to stand in solidarity with our Black men to make a difference in their lives through civic engagement. I stand in solidarity so that men like my brother with a troubled past who struggles with mental illness won't have to continue to experience social issues like police brutality that we're facing today. I also stand in solidarity so Black men who look like my father can feel safe to walk outside and not have to worry about looking over his shoulders because he looks suspicious. I do this work because our Black kings also have a voice too. So now I'm proud to introduce a leader who's been making a difference in Durham, North Carolina. His name is David Dixon. We will hear from David, who serves in a number of powerful roles in North Carolina. David, you have the floor.
For sure. Thank you, Sheena. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, folks. My name is David Dixon. I'm born in Sumter, South Carolina, and raised in Salisbury, North Carolina. I'm a son, I'm a baby brother, I'm a mentor, an educator, popular educator and facilitator, a culture curator, and a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. But above all things, I'm a strong Black man, and every day I aspire to inspire change in other Black men around me. Since first studying political science at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, I've had the privilege of serving in a number of uplifting roles. I've knocked doors and made phone calls for local races and support of Black candidates, but I've also led statewide and national Black voter engagement strategies through the Woke Vote Initiative birthed in Birmingham, Alabama. Currently, I serve as the chair for the Durham County Democratic Party. I did not get to this position without help from Black women and men who are my elders and my mentors. I stand in solidarity with our Black men to make a difference in their lives through civic engagement. I stand in solidarity with Amplify Action so that the next generations of Black men will not have to grow up to experience the same social issues we are facing today. And I stand in solidarity with our Black women who are too often on the front lines fighting for us, although we may fail to reciprocate that energy. I am proud to introduce a brilliant political mind and a leader in our community, Congressman Butterfield. Congressman Butterfield, former chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, led the CBC in the fight to renew the Voting Rights Act for the next 25 years. Also, he proposed a commission to study the challenges facing Black males, including a high rate of homicide and incarceration, as well as other hardships. Part of Congressman Butterfield's commitment to jobs and justice reentry platform is that any person who is not given the opportunity to gain meaningful employment at a decent wage with benefits, regardless of the stakes of their past, has been treated unjustly. We are grateful for Congressman Butterfield's leadership across North Carolina. And without further ado, I want to bring to you all, representing the 1st Congressional District of North Carolina, Congressman G.K. Butterfield. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David. Let me begin by saying good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so very much for inviting me to be a part of this launch today. Let me greet all of those who are listening and viewing this don't want to call it a program, but this virtual session this afternoon. Thank you for joining us, because this is very, very exciting. To Brandon and to Sheena and to all of you who have put your heads together and decided to launch this wonderful, wonderful program designed to reach African-American men. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your passion and all the work that you plan to do with this organization. I pledge to you that whatever I can do to assist you, I will be there for you in any way. For those of you who don't know, I am the federal representative, the congressman for the 1st Congressional District. My district includes 14 counties, including the county of Durham. The bad news is that because of recent voting rights litigation, the legislature had to redraw the lines, the congressional boundaries. And so starting in January, I will no longer be representing Durham County, but we'll be picking up Wayne, Greene, and Nash counties. And so that is some of the breaking news in my work. But regardless, I will be working, whether I have Durham or do not have Durham, I will be working very hard to uplift the issues that you care about. The last few weeks have just been beyond our imagination. Never, ever, ever did we imagine that we would have a worldwide pandemic. We knew about pandemics. We studied about epidemics and pandemics in college and high school, perhaps, but never did we realize that we would see anything that we are facing today. So I hope and pray that all of you are safe. I hope you're well and following the guidelines that have been set forth. We are not out of the pandemic yet. We are still experiencing the awful effects of the pandemic, and it will continue for some time to come. But as a Congress, the first thing we had to do was to respond to the pandemic, and we have done that. We have passed several pieces of legislation over the last few weeks when it was obvious that we had a huge problem. The first thing we did was to pass legislation authorizing $8.3 billion, and most of that went into trying to find a vaccine for the virus. We also began to purchase PPE equipment and to get money in the pipeline so that those being affected could get tested and could get treatment. But very quickly we realized that $8.3 billion was hardly enough to even scratch the surface. And so the next thing we did was to appropriate an additional $100 billion. And we did that some 10 days later. And that money was designed to go to hospitals and to testing and to community health centers and to do a lot of things to try to reach those who were being affected. Very quickly, we realized that that was not enough and we had to do something very massive. And so we came together and passed another bill. We call it the CARES Act, another bill calling for $2.3 trillion, not billion, but $2.3 trillion. And we invested this money in many ways. First of all, we thought it was important to get money in the pockets of those persons who were being affected. And essentially, those individuals who make less than $75,000 a year, we felt that it was very important to get money in their pocket and to get it right away. And so we authorized a payment of $1,200 for every person who earns less than $75,000 a year. We then saw the unemployment rolls beginning to explode. And so we knew that we needed to pass enhanced unemployment. North Carolina has a sorry unemployment system. Excuse me for that bad word, but it is a sorry unemployment insurance system in North Carolina. It pales in comparison to other states, but it is what it is. We have an unemployment system, and so we felt we needed to provide enhanced unemployment. And so the $300 that on average that unemployed people get in North Carolina per week, we've added $600 as an enhanced payment. And so most workers in North Carolina who are unemployed would get somewhere in the $900 per week range. We got that out the door pretty quickly. And then we realized that people were beginning to lose their businesses, and businesses were not able to make payroll, and they were laying people off. We created a program called the PPP program, which was designed to help companies with their payroll to try to keep people working, and we've done that as well. And then we came back and realized that we needed some more help, that the American people are still feeling the pain of this pandemic. We have more than 40 million Americans who are unemployed. We have businesses who are failing. We have people who cannot buy food and cannot pay their rent. And so we passed another bill called the HEROES Act. We passed it overwhelmingly, at least on the Democratic side we did. We passed it overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives. And now that bill is sitting over in the Senate waiting for action. I don't know if the Senate's going to act on it, but I think the American people can figure this out. It is it's the Republican leadership in the Senate that's holding that bill up right now. But we've got all this money in the pipeline, and hopefully we're reaching the American people. And then all of a sudden, May 25th came along, and that tragic incident in Minneapolis, Minnesota, George Floyd, absolutely disgusting, despicable police murder on the street corner there in Minneapolis. 4 police officers brutally subduing George Floyd, putting handcuffs on him, throwing him to the ground, and then kneeling on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. What a tragic murder. But when we looked at the data, it was not only George Floyd, it was Eric Garner and Michael Brown and Tamir Rice and Laquan McDonald and Freddie Gray and Walter Scott and so many more down through the years. And so it became obvious that we needed to raise our voices more. The Black Caucus has been working for years on police misconduct, police brutality legislation. We have gotten some things passed, but not nearly enough. And so we realized that we needed to take the conversation to a higher level. And so the Congressional Black Caucus, I was part of a working group. That's why I've been spending a lot of time in Washington lately. I was part of a working group, and we've started putting together very comprehensive legislation. And then we reached out to Nancy Pelosi and to our Democratic leadership and enlisted their support, and we received their support. And finally, it was time to put it on paper. And so we've put on paper a bill called the Justice in Policing Act of 2020. I hope that you will go online and take a look at it. Very comprehensive piece of legislation that was written primarily by the Congressional Black Caucus. This legislation does not do everything that we want done, but it is a significant step in the right direction. We're going to try to end racial and religious profiling. We're going to end chokeholds and no-knock warrants. We're going to stop law enforcement agencies from getting military-style equipment from the Department of Defense. We're going to hold the police accountable, both in criminal court and in civil court. We're going to change the laws so that we can hold them accountable. Want to create a national database so that we can track on a national scale what's happening in local communities to determine the patterns and practices of local police departments. And when necessary, we can deploy the Department of Justice in there to shut them down. We want the federal authority to investigate police misconduct. A lot of people don't realize, but the federal government does not have the authority to micromanage and to tell local law enforcement agencies how to conduct their business. We can insist that they adhere to the Constitution. We can withhold funding from these agencies if they are not living up to our expectations, but we cannot, under the law, direct their work. We can do it indirectly, but we cannot direct their work. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is to create transparency. We want to change the police culture in this country. We want to put more emphasis on social work and psychological training, and get mental health care into the communities, and try to lighten the load for police departments. They are not social workers. They're not psychologists. They are police officers, and they should step into a situation and use force only when necessary. And the excessive use of force is a violation of federal law. It's a violation of the Constitution, and we're going to curb that in. We had a hearing on it this past Wednesday, 2 days ago. The Judiciary Committee will be marking it up next week. That means getting it ready for final action. And then it will go to the floor of the House of Representatives on June the 25th or June 26th. I am a chief deputy whip in the House. And so not only did I help put this bill together, but over the last few days, I've been whipping. That means making sure that the votes are there in order to get it passed. It takes 218 votes to get a bill passed in the House of Representatives. And I will assure you, I won't give you the number because the news media may be on the call, but I want to assure you that we certainly have the 218 votes that we will need and more. Not sure about Republican votes. The Republicans first said they weren't going to join with us in doing this, and now public opinion is so strong. The protests are very visible and powerful, and now the Republicans, as of yesterday morning, have started reaching out to us, and they are complaining that they did not have a part in the formulation of the bill. No, they didn't. We're the majority party. We formed the bill. We wrote the bill. But now they want to come in and participate in it and let us know what they like, what they dislike. We are all ears. We are ready to listen to their concerns, but we need their votes in order to get it passed. If they don't vote with us, we have the votes on the Democratic side to get it passed, and it will be passed by the end of the month. I can pretty much give you that assurance. Now, what happens in the United States Senate is unknown. At this point, we're getting mixed signals from the Senate, but we will find out in just a few days if it will have any support in the Senate. I can tell you that Senator Booker and Senator Harris, the two African-American senators on the Democratic side, they were on our task force that put together the legislation, and they've done incredible work. The Republican Senator Tim Scott was tapped by the Republican leadership to try to put some ideas together, and we're waiting to see what Senator Scott is going to do. And so enough of that for right now, unless you have any questions about that. But I just wanted to talk about the pandemic and our response to the pandemic. Wanted to talk about the police misconduct, the police brutality, and the legislation that we have introduced in response to that. In closing, let me remind you, I don't need to remind you, that we have an election coming up in November. A big election. Oh, is it huge? We will determine who will occupy the White House. I am one who feels that Donald Trump must go. He must go now. I wish we could put him out today. We've got to wait until November, but we're going to defeat Donald Trump because we're going to have a large turnout in this country. Not only in North Carolina, let me just say the eyes of the nation are watching us in North Carolina. Why? Because we're no longer a red state. We're not a blue state, but we're no longer a red state. Let's call it purple. We're kind of twinks in between, as old folks used to say. We can go either way. And the either way depends on the vote of the millennial population, the vote of Black males, because remember, Black males vote, just like Black Lives Matter, and they do. But Black males vote, and they will be voting in November. Black women have been voting for years. They've been the margin of victory in so many elections, and the Democratic Party knows that, and we will respond to that as well. And so November is a big deal. I will close by telling you who's on the ballot in North Carolina. Many of you already know this, but we have a U.S. Senate race in North Carolina, trying to flip the Senate seat to the Democratic side so that we can pick up 3 on the national level, which will give us control of the United States Senate. Of course, the governor is on the ballot. African-American female Yvonne Lewis Holland is the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor. We have Sherry Beasley, who is our current Chief Justice, who is on the ballot, and she's being assaulted from every direction you can imagine. The money is coming in here to defeat her. Sherry Beasley must be reelected. We have others running for judge. I don't have time to call them out, but we do have 2 congressional seats down in the federal area, District 8 and District 9. African-American female Pat Timmons Goodson, Democratic nominee in the 8th District. Pat is working very hard, as is Cynthia Wallace, who is in the adjoining district, which is Hope County, all the way over to Mecklenburg County. They're working very hard. 2 other congressional districts are in play, and they are good Democratic districts in Raleigh, Greensboro, and Winston-Salem. And so all of these are on the ballot. I am on the ballot in November. Since I don't have Durham, David Dixon anymore, you're not going to be able to help me like you've done over the years. But I've got some David Dixons in the other counties here in the 1st District. And so we're going to be competing as well. I've gone 14 minutes. I was scheduled to go 10 minutes, but let me stop right there. Thank you so very much for listening today.
Thank you so much, Congressman Butterfield. Thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for your legacy of loyalty to the folks across North Carolina and really across the country. You've been a pioneer and a standard bearer for what service should look like. So what I want to do here is allow our viewing audience to ask us a few questions. I see there's a lot happening in our chat box right now. But Congressman Butterfield, I'll also like to hear your perspective on Amplify's work, and especially during this political climate. But we'll get into the first question. All right, let's see. So Jamar Brown asks, Congressman, a part of our work is to encourage and train Black men to run for office. Can you talk about the importance of community service and serving on boards and commissions as a training ground to effectively run for office?
That is a question that I certainly appreciate, because I feel very strongly about this. As much as I loved and adored and supported Barack Obama, one thing negative about the Obama years, and that is he was such a powerful impression on young African Americans. So many people think that they can just jump out and run for a top office without doing the grunt work, without doing the groundwork. And so that's why your question is very relevant. I want to encourage African American men and women to get involved in the political process. My generation is going to be moving on very soon, sooner than later. And we need to have trained a cadre of young Black leaders who are ready to stand up and to step into elective office. And the way you start that is you do basic stuff like voter registration, like knocking on doors to talk to people. Remember, Barack Obama just didn't run for the Senate during the first run. He was a community organizer on the south side of Chicago. He went into Cabrini, I can't pronounce the last word, Cabrini housing project in Chicago. He was a community organizer and went in there and worked with the least of these in that community. And as a result of that, it gave him the lift that he needed. And then he became a state legislator. And then he was elected to the United States Senate. And then the world began to see his qualities, and then he became president. But he started at the grassroots level. You've got to go to school board meetings because they make some pretty powerful decisions at the school board level. City councils, county commission meetings. You've got to get involved in the community. You've got to learn what the issues are. You've got to speak up, speak out, and be heard. And so I want all of you who have an interest in running for office one day to get started now. Right now in the 2020, if you're not already started, to get involved in the 2020 elections. There's not a better time to get started than right now, when this is a defining moment in American history.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Jamar, for your question. That was really timely. And I always say when I'm talking to folks who want to run for office that your run for office should be an evolution of the work that you're already doing in the community. And what you just described, Congressman, is exactly that. An evolution. So we'll find another question here. So the next question comes from Euladria. Her question is, how do we support formerly incarcerated individuals or returning citizens with reconnecting in the political process to use their voice for change?
Thank you for the question. So many of our young people who, when they are released from prison, they think that they have lost the right to vote for the rest of their life. North Carolina's ahead of the game. I was critical about North Carolina's unemployment insurance system, but I'm going to be positive about North Carolina in this respect. You have an automatic right to register to vote after you have completed your obligation to the court. And so if you have served an active prison sentence, you are not on probation or parole, you absolutely have the right to vote. Someone told me the other day that they know someone, or they knew someone who had not voted throughout his lifetime because he sincerely thought that he had lost the right to vote 40 years ago when he served an active prison sentence. But that is not the law in North Carolina, and so that is good. What I want our legislature to do is to say that everyone has the right to vote, whether you are incarcerated or not incarcerated. If you are an American citizen, you should have the right to vote.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Part of the work that we're doing with Amplify is focusing in on that community. I shared my personal story last night. I won't get back into it. I see a question coming in from Mr. Rashad Gaines. Rashad says, Congressman, thank you for being here today. What's one piece of advice that you'd share with a young man in activism or party leadership who's dealing with a moral quandary? Does he choose the party or the people?
That's a very intellectual question. Thank you very much, Rashad, for asking that. There's no easy answer. Every elected official that I associate with struggles with that every day. We have basically a two-party system at the state and federal level. And so out of necessity, you align yourself with a political party. When you're with a party, then you align yourself with the platform of that party. You help formulate the platform. And so most African Americans in this country have aligned themselves with the Democratic Party because the party has spoken, maybe not as much as we would like to, but has spoken over the years very forcefully on the issues that we care about, starting during the Depression. When Franklin Roosevelt had his program that put a lot of food on the table. And that's what attracted African Americans to the Democratic Party. During Reconstruction era, the Democratic Party was the bad party. It was the racist party. It was the Republican Party during those days that believed in maybe not equality, but at least in freedom for African Americans. But that changed. Don't get me into a long speech about that because I could do it. I feel very strongly about it. But the Republican Party was the good party. That ended in 1900. Nothing happened until the 1930s. And that's when Franklin Roosevelt came along, and Black people appreciated that and aligned with the Democratic Party. And then the Civil Rights Movement came along. We passed the Civil Rights Bill. That was Democrats. Voting rights, that was Democrats. Fair housing, that was Democrats. And so over the years, African Americans have trended toward the Democratic Party. But your question is deeper and wider than that. Your question is, should we align with the party? I'm taking your words out of context. Should we align with the party regardless of our conscience? And the answer to that is no. I think, thank you for putting it back up. You call it a moral quandary. Yes, if a member finds himself or herself in a moral quandary, For example, John Lewis is our dear brother. John Lewis is really struggling right now. He has pancreatic cancer, but for years and years and years, John Lewis would never, ever, ever vote for a defense bill. He didn't believe in investing trillions or billions of dollars into the defense infrastructure. But then the Republicans started doing some things like putting social programs into the defense bill, which created a moral quandary for John Lewis. And John and I would sit on the phone and we would talk about it. You know, it's easy if it's clearly a defense bill, you can say, no, I don't support, you know, a lot of money in the military. But when you start putting, you know, housing and food programs in the defense bill, then you have a moral quandary. That's when you have to look at the four corners of the legislation and decide what's in the best interest of the people that you represent. David, that's one of the great tragedies in losing Durham. Durham had my back. Durham had my back when I had to take these tough votes. I knew that Durham was always there. I know the mindset in Durham. I know their politics in Durham, and I knew that whatever, Durham had my back. I don't have that safety net right now, but still, I'm going to continue to vote my conscience, regardless of whether I have Durham in the mix or not.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I see Michael Bailey also responded. Michael Bailey is the editor and founder of The Minority Eye in South Carolina. Thank you for joining us, Michael. So our next question, and we have time for two more here, because I know, Congressman, you're very, very busy. Thank you again.
You just don't know. You think you know. You don't know. You just don't know. Thank you. Yeah.
I know you are getting on the road for another one, another event. So I think we have one more. Okay. So Troy McLean asked, Congressman, thank you so much for your service. In your years of tenure, what would you feel is our greatest lesson to learn from?
Wow. Thank you for that, Troy. I think what we've seen in the streets of America over the last 3 weeks demonstrates, you know, what public opinion means. Public opinion is powerful. During the civil rights days, we had African Americans who were protesting, African Americans who were getting hosed by the police and attacked by the dogs. White people were not in the streets. It was Black people. The only time I saw a white person demonstrating was when I went to the 1963 March on Washington, and I saw white people in the crowd, and I thought that was very, very remarkable, because I had never seen that in the South. But now we're in a new day. There are white people of goodwill who are now willing to support Black Lives Matter, who are willing to defend to not defend the bad conduct of police. We have a rainbow coalition, and that is very, very powerful. Would you put the question back up so I can see it again? That is very, very powerful. And so that is the lesson that we need to learn from this moment, that public opinion matters. When we were debating the Obamacare legislation 10 years ago, we were ready to pass this thing in 2009, but the Republicans went home and their base turned on them. And when they came back 3 weeks later after the recess, they had completely flipped on us because of public opinion. Public opinion can make a huge difference in the legislative process. And so do not underestimate the value of what is taking place in the streets of America right now, because those people who are decision makers, they are paying attention. They're beginning to pay attention to what's happening in the streets of America, because it's not going to go away.
And just to restate the question there, he was asking, in your years of tenure, what would you say was the greatest lesson learned from your experience being in office?
Sure, lesson learned. That was the point that I was trying to make a moment ago. I've learned that public opinion matters.
Yeah.
And when politicians have to run for office every 2, 4, 6, or 8 years, and the reason I say 8 is because judges run every 8 years, the opinion of the electorate matters. I knew that all along, but I have just over the last 10 years really, really started to appreciate the power of public opinion.
Thank you. And the last question here, and I see Sharon Mullen asked a question that I want to just bring up. So what is the best way to channel the change in climate into further flipping the state to blue? And here in South Carolina, this governor is a Republican controlled state, as you know.
Yes.
And I know the battles in North Carolina are strong in a purple state.
Yes. We've got to flip a few states, and we're poised to do that. But remember, Donald Trump did not win the popular vote in 2016. He won the Electoral College. He won that because he narrowly won Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And if you take his win margin in those three states, it adds up to 80,000 votes. And that's it. 80,000 votes in three states. And so the margin of victory lies into our get out to vote efforts. We've got to get the vote out. I don't know what's going to happen in South Carolina. Jamie is like a son to me. He's very dear to me down in South Carolina. He's running for the United States Senate. And guess what? There are some polls that have him within striking distance. Wouldn't it be great if Jamie can knock off Lindsey Graham? And it's conceivable that it could happen. But in North Carolina, the data and the polling suggests that we are well positioned to turn North Carolina blue. But the elephant in the room is the pandemic. We don't know what it's going to look like in October and November. If we have another spike in the coronavirus, and if we don't have voting by mail, which is what we're trying to encourage the North Carolina legislature to pass, and so far they've said they're not going to do it, and we've got to depend on in-person voting or absentee balloting, then it's really going to be a challenge. But I can tell you that if the Republicans turn out at 60%, Democrats turn out at 60%, we win. Republicans turn out at 60%, we turn out at 50%, we lose. And so this whole process is about turnout, and the turnout relative to the turnout of the opposition. Hope I'm making a point there. There's a relativity factor in turnout. And so we've got to make sure that we don't let the pandemic deter us. We've got to get people out to vote. And if we've got to resort to absentee balloting, then doggone it, let's go ahead and resort to absentee ballots. Let's get these ballots out. There are no excuse absentee ballots. You don't have to give an excuse. You can get an absentee ballot because you want an absentee ballot. And so that's one way of getting it done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Congressman. And for our viewers, Amplify Action, we're a 501c4 nonpartisan organization, but we're doing this work to ensure that we are educating, motivating, mobilizing Black men across the country. And you have to be educated about the process. So these are all the questions that we could take this afternoon. If you have more questions, for our team will answer them in the chat box. So continue to comment. We want to keep the conversation going. Some of the questions we might even answer offline. Also, I just want to again thank Congressman Butterfield for being with us. He's been a great advocate for our community for years. I met him for the first time at CBC last year, and it was amazing. It was a great event. So thank you for constantly setting the mark and
let me thank you for your energy. Thank you for all that you guys are doing. I can see some real future in Amplify Action. I can see where you're going with this as a C4. That is smart to become a 501c4. You can do a lot of things, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
So for everyone viewing, I'm asking you to do 3 things for us, just 3. 1, go onto our website. All right. Sign up to become a member of Amplify. Visit ampourvote.org. ampourvote.com, and we'll put it at the bottom. It's ticking right below here. So it's ampourvote.com, and make sure that you're receiving our emails and text messaging so that you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing. And I promise you, we're not going to flood your inbox or bombard your cell phone. Also, you can check out our team members, our upcoming events, and every update for even updating your registration to make sure that you're squared away for election day on our website. Also, to do the work of Amplify, to reach Black men where they are, to build out our team so that we can put boots on the ground in South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, and Tennessee. It requires us to do fundraising. So I'm asking for your help. Donate to our efforts. No donation is too small and no donation is too big. All right. Every single dollar matters. When we talk about the work of engaging Black men, no one else does it because it's so expensive to do, right? These other entities aren't going into the rural parts of Alabama and South Carolina, right? They're not going into, where I grew up in the hood to talk to folks there, but we are. So we're asking you for your support in making a contribution to our efforts. Also, the last thing, please share our content. We need to spread the word about what we're doing and who we are. So you can start by following us on social media, then share it with at least 5 of your friends. We've launched our online website with all of our social media tools. Everything's the same across the board. It's Amp Our Vote. Amp Our Vote on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. But again, I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We've launched Amplify yesterday, and it has been an amazing 24 hours already. Your support means the world to us. We are in this work to fight for our community, to build up our base of Black men so that we can regain the equity and justice for our community through our vote, through our actions and civic participation. Sheena, thank you so much for helping me today. I don't know if you're going to be back on the screen here. Sheena Matthews, again, is our Director of Development for Amplify Action. She is my first fam, Sora, member Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you for everything that you bring to this team. I have to reiterate it. We cannot do this work without our sisters working with us. I truly believe that the relationship between Black men and Black women is irrefutably linked. We cannot rise without each other. We have to continue to work together because together we'll make the change happen. Sheena, do you have anything to share with us before we go?
Yes, and thank you so much for your kind words, Brandon. Thank you for allowing and helping us do the work in the community. We have a great team, Rashard, Yolandria, Joe. I just want to shout out everybody that, in case I miss Ariel, thank you guys for making this happen. And we're just asking for your support in the community. Let's go register these Black men.
Let's get to work. Thank you so much. Together, we will build, rise, and amplify. Thank you for joining us. We have a special announcement this weekend. Keep your eyes open to all of our platforms. We're going to announce it within the next 24 hours. So you want to be in the know on this one. I promise you, it's going to be amazing. But until then, be blessed.